Whispers of Shadows, A Faith's Decay by V. Runer. Chapter 1 Summons in the Fog. Morning arrived like a ghostly presence, its mist curling over the moorlands with a silent, creeping intent. Sir Thalan stood at his chamber window, a simple stone frame gazing out into the blurred gray stillness. The dampness in the air clung to him, reminiscent of battles etched into his memory, both won and lost. It seemed fitting that a summons would come on a day like this, when shadows wove themselves into the fog and the sky seemed heavy, burdened with the promise of rain yet to fall. The royal decree lay on his desk, its wax seal already broken, yet its command weighed heavily on his mind. Daromir, a name that tugged at his memory like a half-remembered hymn from a childhood long buried. It was a village people spoke of in whispers, a place shrouded in tales of curses and madness. The task was straightforward, at least on the surface: investigate and report. But Thalan knew all too well the dangers of taking orders at face value, especially when they came from nobles who understood so little of the world beyond their sheltered walls. His armor, though battered, still retained the muted shine of metal weathered by countless winters. As Thalan slipped into its familiar heft, he found an odd comfort in its embrace. It was a reminder that no matter how deep the shadows he must traverse, they would always be met with the edge of steel. He secured the final buckle and reached for his sword, a companion more loyal than any friend. Its hilt was polished smooth from years of his steady grip. The journey to Daromir started like any other, with a hesitant embrace of the unseen. At the outskirts of the village, where the fog lingered heavily on the ground, he encountered his companions. The mute scribe, a ghostly presence with eyes that seemed to hold 1,000 unsaid stories, stood off to the side, gripping his scrolls as if they were shields against the world. His silence wasn't a choice. The brutal scar across his throat bore witness to the violence that had robbed him of his voice. Across the room stood Sister Alara, cast out from her convent for reasons that lingered in hushed whispers, never daring to find voice. Her eyes were sharp, cutting through the shadows like a blade, and her hands hovered near the rosary at her waist, fingers dancing over the beads with an almost desperate energy. Her faith was a battered, bruised thing, yet it endured, a flickering flame holding back the encroaching darkness. Then there was Dr. Malus, the enigmatic plague doctor whose mask concealed not just his face but his true intentions. The beaked mask, a haunting relic from an era when death roamed freely among the living, added to the aura of mystery. Thalan couldn't shake the unsettling stillness in the eyes that gazed at him from within its shadowy depths. There was an undeniable darkness in Malus, mirroring the very mists they trudged through, and it left Thalan with a troubling sense that this was a man who had gazed into the abyss for far too long. Together they ventured into the swirling fog, with the village of Daromir looming ahead like a secret on the verge of being unveiled. The path was perilous, the air heavy with the damp chill of the approaching night. As they trudged on, Thalan felt the weight of the place envelop him, like a shroud draping over his shoulders. Out of the mists, the village gradually took shape, much like a forgotten memory clawing its way back. The houses crouched close together, their wooden frames leaning with age, while the thatched roofs sagged under years of neglect. An oppressive silence draped itself over the streets, so intense it seemed to push against their very skin. Thalan, usually skeptical, felt his doubts beginning to falter under the weight of such tangible unease. It was as if time had stopped its relentless march here, leaving decay to creep along at a glacial pace, creating a scene of stubborn endurance. At the heart of this desolate land stood the abbey, its stone walls jutting up like the skeletal remains of a beast turned to stone ages ago. This was where faith and science had once clashed, leaving behind wounds that never healed, tainting both the earth and its inhabitants. As Thalan drew nearer, a creeping chill snaked down his spine, unrelated to the cold air. The abbey seemed almost alive, its stones pulsating as if they held the echoes of past events within their ancient embrace. "Can you feel it?" Sister Alara murmured, her voice a fragile thread weaving through the thick, muted hush that surrounded them. Thalan nodded, unable to find the right words. He could feel countless eyes from the abbey fixed on him, their silent judgments heavy in the air. He harbored no illusions about what their final verdict would be. Dr. Malus glided through the shadows with a fluid grace, seemingly untouched by the oppressive gloom surrounding him. Places like these, he murmured, his voice a soft rasp beneath the mask. They hold on to stuffed memories, guilt, fear. They never really let it go. The scribe, eyes wide and sharp, scribbled with a fierce urgency. He wasn't just recording words, he was capturing the thick, silent tension that filled the air between them. His hand raced across the page with a fervor that suggested he was driven by something deeper than duty, as if he were trying to seize not just the tale, but the very soul of the place itself. Their footsteps tapped rhythmically on the cobblestones, each step quickly absorbed by the thick blanket of fog as they moved toward the abbey. Thalen's hand instinctively hovered over the hilt of his sword, a silent assurance that he wasn't entirely vulnerable to the unseen threats that might be lurking. But deep down, he understood that mere steel was powerless against the kind of darkness that had seeped into Daromir. As they arrived at the imposing wooden doors of the abbey, Sister Alara moved ahead, resting her hand gently on the worn surface. Her lips whispered a silent prayer. Thalen, standing close by, thought he caught the faint outlines of wings in the swirling mist, a play of light perhaps, or maybe a flicker of hope that some divine presence was watching over them. The doors groaned open, unveiling the abbey's shadowy interior, a darkness that seemed all too eager to engulf them. Thalen exchanged a knowing look with his companions, each one as determined and weighed down by their own secrets as he was. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward into the void. The air was thick, filled with the musty scent of old wax and forgotten incense, a reminder of times long past. Shadows clung to the walls like ancient memories refusing to fade, and as they made their way through the nave, the years seemed to press down on them with a heavy, relentless force. This was a place where faith had been distorted, where science had pushed too far, and where the whispers of history clung like a mournful song. Among these decaying walls lay the truth of Daromir, a truth poised to reveal its secrets to those daring or reckless enough to pursue them. The path ahead loomed dark and treacherous, yet deep within the abbey, Thalen sensed a flicker of something he hadn't felt in years, a purpose. As the fog curled once more around the entrance, he understood there was no going back. They would confront whatever awaited them and, in that confrontation, face not just the haunting legacy of Daromir, but also the shadows lurking within their own hearts. The abbey doors creaked shut behind them, enveloping the group in shadowed silence. The air hung heavy with anticipation, as if the very walls whispered of secrets eager to be uncovered. Thalen sensed the abbey's pulse, slow, deliberate, a constant reminder that hidden truths seldom remain buried forever, no matter how deeply they're concealed. With that thought lingering, they moved deeper into the abyss. The fog curled like ghostly fingers at their backs, and the darkness of the abbey wrapped around them like a shroud. The past lay ahead, restless and eager to whisper its tale. Chapter 2: Echoes of the Unseen. The village of Daromir was wrapped in a perpetual twilight, with the sun's weak light struggling to pierce through the thick layers of clouds and mist that blanketed the ground like a shroud. A sense of desolation seeped into the cobblestone streets, where shadows twisted and murmured tales of sorrow to those brave enough to heed them. It was in this somber setting, surrounded by the muted cries of ravens and the wind's mournful whispers, that Sir Thalen and his companions found themselves upon their weary arrival. The sound of hooves clattering against stone shattered the stillness, an unsettling noise that pulled the wary eyes of villagers from the safety behind their thatched doorways. Their faces, thin and pale like specters caught between realms, silently tracked the procession as it moved past. Those expressions told stories of distrust and fear, a tapestry of emotions as old as the cobblestones beneath them. The villagers seemed as entwined with the landscape as the twisted trees and the ancient ruins casting shadows in the distance. Their lives were tied to the earth, a resignation etched into their beings by generations soaked in hardship. Thalen led the way, his armor bearing the marks of countless battles, both triumphs and defeats. His eyes, hidden beneath the visor of his helm, constantly scanned the road ahead, always alert for dangers lurking in plain sight or shadow. Disgrace clung to him like an unseen shackle, each step a reminder of his past failures. Yet, in the ghostly quiet of Darrowmere, he felt an unexpected peace. Here, far from the tangled web of court politics and royal intrigue, his past sins were nothing more than murmurs carried off by the wind. Behind him, Sister Alara rode with a grace that masked the storm raging inside her. Her eyes, wide and restless, danced over the landscape, as though desperately searching for comfort in the remnants of a faith she had long abandoned. A distant cry, a crow perhaps, or some otherworldly voice pulled her gaze toward the cluster of trees edging the village. There she witnessed something both vivid and terrifying, a vision that etched itself deeply into her mind. A circle of hooded figures, their faces hidden, chanting in a tongue older than the ancient stones beneath them. It was a ritual, its purpose forgotten by time, and at its heart, a figure bound by chains of light and shadow, twisting in unspeakable torment. With a sudden gasp, she tore her eyes away, her heart hammering wildly in her chest. She couldn't bring herself to speak of the sight she had witnessed, terrified that uttering it aloud would let it take root, festering like a seed of madness in the fertile soil of her mind. Dr. Malus lingered at the back, his eyes concealed by the eerie beak of his mask, an accessory that seemed more fitting for a phantom of horror than a physician. He studied the villagers with a distant curiosity, taking in the pallor of their skin, the slight tremor in their hands, and the feverish gleam in their eyes. There was an illness in this place, he realized, a suffocating despair that enveloped the village like the unyielding fog that never lifted. As they ventured into the depths of Darrowmere, a shadowy figure emerged, revealing an elderly man whose face was etched with the lines of age and worry. Despite the cataracts that clouded his eyes, they gleamed with a fierce intensity, contradicting the frailty of his body. "You've come looking for answers in a place where there is scarce as hope," he rasped, his voice crackling like dry leaves. "Darrowmere isn't meant for outsiders. We're cursed here, and that curse doesn't welcome strangers." With a soft clink of armor, Thalen dismounted, the sound barely disturbing the stillness around him. Removing his helm, he revealed a face etched with the marks of time and hardship. "We're here to find out what's really going on," he said, his voice unwavering and calm. "Whatever curse is on this village, we'll tackle it head on." The old man shook his head, a sorrowful smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Ah, the truth," he murmured, voice laced with a weary wisdom. "It's a burden heavier than any chain, my knight. You know, it's broken men way stronger than you." Just as Thalen was about to speak, a young girl suddenly dashed out from the crowd, eyes wide with a terror that seemed to go beyond just fear. She clutched a roughly carved wooden doll tightly to her chest, its features faded and worn. "Mother says the spirits will come for us, like they did for the others," she murmured, her voice shaking with fear. Sister Alara crouched down in front of the girl, her stern face softening into a kind smile as she looked at that pure innocence. "The spirits won't touch you as long as you stay in the light," she whispered, her words easing away the creeping shadows. "Have courage, my dear, and they will remain at bay." The girl nodded quietly, her eyes drifting off to some faraway spot beyond the mist. The old man gestured to a narrow path, winding up the hill towards the abbey's silhouette, its spires jutting into the gloomy sky like bony fingers. "The answers you seek lie within the abbey," he warned, his voice carrying a hint of caution. "But be careful. You might not want to uncover what you find, and the dead aren't fond of uninvited guests." With those words hanging in the air like a brewing storm, he turned away and disappeared into the crowd, leaving the group to grapple with the weight of his unsettling message. The path to the abbey felt like a quiet journey into the heart of darkness, with unseen eyes watching from all around. Sister Alara walked beside Thalen, her calm presence oddly comforting in the oppressive gloom. Her mind was a whirlwind, trying to make sense of the vision she'd seen, but only stirring up more questions. "There's power here," he murmured with a soft intensity in his voice. "An energy that has woven itself into the very stones, left by those who dared to twist the natural order to their desires. Thalen kept his eyes glued to him, instincts on high alert. "And what about the spirits the villagers mentioned?" he whispered, his voice low and careful. "They might just be the lingering whispers of souls who once chased after immortality, now caught in a limbo between worlds." Dr. Malus thought aloud, catching Sister Alara's eye for a moment. "Or perhaps they're the shadows of remorse, haunting this place like an ever-present shroud." The words hung in the air, heavy with things left unsaid. Here, the line between the living and the dead, reality and madness, was so thin it almost vanished. A flicker caught their eye, a shadow darting like a ghostly dancer at the edge of their vision. Thalen's hand went to his sword instinctively, the blade gleaming like a sliver of moonlight in the gloom. "We're not alone," he murmured, tension thick in his voice, every nerve on edge for whatever might happen next. Sister Alara closed her eyes, her mind tuned to the subtle whispers of the unseen. She sensed a presence ancient, restless, always watching with a patience sharpened by endless ages. It wasn't a friend or a foe, just a guardian of this place, bound by duty to observe everything as it unfolded. Time seemed to hang in the air, each second stretching out until the shadow. "We need to get to the bottom of what really happened here," Thalen said, sliding his sword back into its sheath with a confident gesture. "It's the only way we can even begin to lift the curse that's tormenting this village." His words hit home with the group, and they all nodded in agreement. As they left the chamber, you could feel the shared determination in the air, like a heavy but comforting cloak around them. The path ahead was full of twists and turns, with danger and deceit lurking everywhere. But deep in the abbey were the answers to Daromir's secrets. They moved forward cautiously, guided by the flickering candlelight of wisdom and the steady resolve of their looming shadows. "Stepping out, here," Thalen mumbled, his voice a low, rumbling growl that blended right into the quiet around them. "This is our starting point." Alice nodded, her fingers swirling in the air as if she were trying to sketch some forgotten symbol. It was hard to say if she was warding off unseen forces or honoring a memory. Faustus didn't nod back, but something shifted around him, like the mysteries of the abbey were calling to him. The great doors creaked open, echoing like a sad song at midnight. A breath of air, heavy with dust and old forgotten prayers, rushed out as if it had been. "Take a look at this," Thalen mumbled, nodding towards the altar at the far end of the hall. It was a mess of alchemical stuff, beakers, retorts, and scrolls full of equations that seemed to jump right off the page. "Proof of what they've been up to," he added, his voice carrying a hint of something darker. Ellis moved forward carefully, lightly touching the surface, almost as if she could sense its history. "They tried to mix things that should, stayed apart," she said softly, her words heavy with hard-earned wisdom. "Faith and alchemy, that's a risky mix." Faustus wandered among his old experiments, his gloved fingers gently brushing the tools like they were old friends. "Knowledge holds power," he whispered, his voice muffled by the mask. "But chasing truth? That's where the danger lies." Thalen glanced at a nearby tapestry, its colors faded over time. Still, the image was clear, a serpent wrapped around a cross, hinting at untold mysteries. "What does this mean?" he asked, nodding at it with a curious but uneasy look. Ellis frowned, her brow furrowing as she studied the image. "Could it be a warning?" she mused softly. "Or maybe a promise?" The scribe was already at work, his eyes darting between the intricate tapestry and the paper before him, capturing its essence with an almost uncanny precision. Thalen stood by, a creeping unease settling over him. It was as if the abbey itself was alive, its ancient stones breathing them in, making them part of its silent, watchful presence. They ventured further into the heart of the abbey, where the corridors seemed to close in around them, and the light faded to a murmur. Shadows reached out as if to graze their skin, murmuring secrets in a tongue that danced just out of reach. The air turned chillier, and the very stones seemed to bear down on them, heavy with silent verdicts. Deep within the shadowy heart of the abbey, They stumbled upon a lab, a grotesque blend of science and blasphemy. This was where the alchemists had dared to ply their forbidden craft, chasing the dream of turning lead into gold, and more chillingly, the essence of life itself. Shelves brimmed with vials of strange liquids, each one shimmering with eerie, unnatural colors. At the center of the room loomed a table, its surface marred by the scars of countless experiments gone awry. Thalen's faith flickered like a candle in the wind, uncertainty gnawing at the core of his soul. A knight by duty and honor, he had vowed to shield the realm with blade and flame, yet now he found himself surrounded by relics that whispered of a different power, one that mocked the very order he had dedicated his life to defend. Alice shuddered, her gaze drifting as though peering into the depths of time itself. "They had the guts to play God," she murmured, her voice as delicate as the chill of winter's breath. "They got too full of themselves and ended up losing their way." Faustus approached an odd contraption, a strange blend of brass and glass that emitted a dim, eerie glow. "This is what they've been aiming for," he murmured, his voice tinged with a kind of reverence that sent a shiver down Thalen's spine. "Maybe it's a philosopher's stone or just a creepy knockoff." The scribe, always keen-eyed, recorded the unfolding scene with unwavering precision, even as the shadows thickened around him, pressing in with an unsettling weight. "What happened to them?" Thalen inquired, his voice barely above a whisper, though a cold dread in Elis shut her eyes, her face a canvas of etched sorrow. "They became the whispers, the lingering voices that haunt these halls, trapped in the stone by their own making." The scribe paused his sketching, lifting his gaze with eyes that cut through layers of deceit like a blade. He tapped his book gently, then pointed towards the shadows, leaving an unspoken question lingering in the stillness. "Yes," Alice replied, catching the unspoken question in his eyes. "Their spirits are still here, caught in the—" A cold draft whispered through the room, making Thalen reach for his sword out of habit, even though he knew it was useless against memories long past. Even with his doubts, a spark of determination lit up inside him, a strong resolve to push on and uncover the truths hidden in the shadows of Daromir's ruins. As they turned to leave, following the scribe's drawings and Ellis's visions, the abbey seemed to sigh. "Here," Thalen murmured, his voice a low rumble that echoed around the dim chamber, "is where we'll uncover our answers, though I dread they may be truths best left buried." With a slight nod from Thalen, they stepped into the abbey. The halls seemed to echo with the whispers of monks long gone. The air was thick, a mix of decay and the sharp scent of old alchemical brews. Each step was muffled by dust, covering up the secrets of those who once walked these eerie corridors. As they went deeper into the abbey, it felt like the walls were closing in, almost like they wanted to swallow them whole. Strange runes. Their faith was like a gateway, she whispered, her voice carrying like a far-off echo. It opened a path to both the divine and the damned. Dr. Malus leaned in closer, his curiosity sparked by the old texts in front of him. With steady, skilled hands, he carefully picked up volumes whispering secrets about alchemy and the art of manipulating life itself. Even though he was dedicated to science, the forbidden pull of these books stirred something deeper, a shadowy intrigue inside him. What were they hoping to accomplish? Thalen whispered, his voice barely audible as he gently turned the delicate pages of the old manuscript. "Maybe it's about rising above our mortal limits," Malus thought out loud, his voice a bit muffled by the mask. "To cheat death or tether one's soul to the endless. It's humanity's timeless folly, always reaching for what should forever elude us." Thalen glanced at the plague doctor, trying to figure out if there was more to his calm demeanor. Was Malus just a knowledge seeker, or was there something more sinister behind his curiosity? Almost as if he could sense Thalen's eyes on him, Malus adjusted his focus, letting his fingers drift over the ornate spine of a particularly intricate book. "These books might just hold the secrets to unraveling the corruption that plagues this place," he murmured, his voice tinged with both awe and caution, "but uncovering such truths often comes at a heavy cost." As they dug deeper into the chamber's mysteries, the air felt weird heavy but somehow uplifting, Oren was all over the place, jotting down notes like a madman, letters and symbols flying off the page. His eyes had this intense look that unsettled Thalen. What drove this quiet guy? What was he so desperate to find out with all that scribbling? But the real mystery wasn't just in the old texts, it was buried deep inside them. As they uncovered the Thalen, Alara's voice quietly cut through the nighttime buzz, a gentle break in the silence. You have to see this. She stood in front of a long-forgotten mural, buried under layers of dirt and neglect. The painting showed a haunting scene. Monks huddled in a circle, their faces a mix of pain and ecstasy. In the center, an ethereal figure hovered, part angel, part demon, caught between salvation and damnation. This is their legacy, Ilara said softly, sadness lacing her voice. It's a testament to the folly of ambition without humility. The mural. We have to go, Thalen insisted, keeping his voice steady even though he felt like a storm was raging inside. We've witnessed enough to grasp the peril. Whatever sinister force has a hold on Daromir, it's not confined to these walls. As they got ready to leave, it was like the abbey took a deep breath, and its old stone walls seemed to hum with some kind of energy. The whispers got louder, blending into one eerie murmur echoing through every dark corner. It reminded them that the abbey's secrets were far from uncovered. Thalen led them through the winding corridors, feeling the heavy history of the abbey on their shoulders. When they stepped into the cool night air of the village, he looked back. Sir Thalen, you walk on hallowed ground with feet unworthy. Father Anselm's voice rang out, rough and clear in the crisp morning air. Thalen met the priest's eyes, feeling like he was staring right into the heart of Daromir. Whether it's sacred or not, Father, we're after the truth. Isn't it the duty of the faithful to find the light, even when it's hidden by shadows? Father Anselm's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile or a snarl, but a bit of both, unsettling in its own way. Faith, he spoke, his voice soft and measured, isn't about light and darkness. It's about obedience and heresy. You and your companions sow nothing but discord among us. Alara stepped out from behind Thalen, her plain nun's habit contrasting starkly with the decay around them. Her voice, gentle yet steady, cut through the silence like a hymn. Father, she started, her words laced with a quiet conviction. If faith can endure being questioned, can it really be called faith? The priest's face twisted, his calm mask almost cracking under the pressure of defiance. Before he could say anything, Alara continued, her voice steady but pleading. We aren't here to blaspheme, we seek understanding. This village, these people deserve to know the truth. Thalen watched Father Anselm closely and caught a hint of doubt flicker across the priest's face before he quickly covered it up with his usual stern expression. Be cautious of the path you choose, Anselm warned, his voice a mix of dread and certainty, for it leads only to ruin. With that, the priest suddenly turned away, leaving as quickly as he'd come. The air was heavy with unresolved tension, a buzz that hung around even after he was gone. Alara stood quietly next to Thalen, watching the priest's figure slowly fade into the swirling fog. His words are like thorns, she whispered, her voice a mix of bitterness and caution. Thalen nodded, his gaze lingering where the village and the forest tangled together in a shadowy embrace. Faith, he murmured, can feel like both a safe place and a trap. I used to think my sword was all about justice. Now it's just there, reminding me of how wrong I was. Alara looked into his eyes, a deep connection forming in their shared sorrow. We're all just searching, you know, she murmured. Sometimes, when we're stuck between what we believe and what we doubt, it's the shadows that really guide us. In the quiet that settled over them, their mutual disillusionment lingered, heavy and unspoken, like a vow neither dared to voice. At that moment, the scribe, a slender figure with eyes as keen as the quill he held, moved toward them with a quiet urgency. He gestured frantically, urging them to follow him as he guided them back into the depths of the abbey, a place where daylight shrank away behind stone, leaving shadows to rule. They ventured down into the depths of the abbey, where the stones felt damp as though they were breathing the earth's heavy sighs. The air was thick with the taste of forgotten prayers. The scribe's lantern threw flickering shadows on the walls, revealing carvings of angels, their features worn away by the relentless grip of time and neglect. In a secluded alcove, partially obscured by the rubble of fallen arches, the scribe pointed toward a concealed passageway, a slender crack in the stone, gaping like the mouth of a sleeping beast. Thalen's heart raced at the sight. This was a path to secrets long buried, a vein leading into the very core of Daromir's enigma. Alara ran her fingers along the cold stone, feeling the delicate grooves etched into its surface. Somewhere people have completely forgotten about, she whispered softly. The spirits still remember, though. Thalen nodded, a heavy sense of history pressing down on him, the echoes of the Abbey's past swirling like a storm around his thoughts. We've got to keep going, even if the path ahead's pretty risky. Just as they were about to step into the passage, Dr. Malus emerged, unsettling in the way he always was, his mask only adding to the disquiet. His gestures were jerky, like a marionette swaying to the whims of an invisible puppeteer. Secrets on top of secrets, he murmured, his words slipping quietly from behind the beak of his mask. Once the Abbey had been a sanctuary of science, its halls vibrating with the alchemical dance of creation and decay. Thalen observed the plague doctor with mounting apprehension, his eyes tracing the subtle shake in the man's hands and the unsettling glint of fever lighting up his gaze. What are you looking for, doctor, wandering around this maze of stone and shadow? Malus halted, tilting his head slightly as if catching the faint whispers of a conversation meant only for him. The heart of the mystery, he murmured softly, the secret to living forever, hidden right here in this place. Thalen and Alara exchanged a glance, a silent acknowledgement of the madness consuming the doctor. Together they stepped into the passage, the scribe trailing them, his lantern casting a flickering, fragile light against the engulfing darkness. As they ventured further into the depths, the air turned sharply cold, and the walls crept in, squeezing the breath from their lungs. The crushing weight of the stone overhead bore down on them, a ghostly echo of the countless souls who had once wandered these corridors, each in pursuit of their own truths, their own redemption. In the oppressive darkness, time twisted and warped, each minute feeling like an endless expanse as they wound their way through the maze-like corridors. Finally, they stepped into a massive chamber, so vast that the dome ceiling disappeared into the shadows above. At the heart of the room stood an altar, shrouded in the tattered remains of a tapestry. Once, it had captured a scene of celestial splendor, but now its vibrant imagery had faded into obscurity. Here, the scribe stopped abruptly, his eyes widening in awe, as if he had stumbled upon the world's very core. Thalen moved toward the altar, his fingers trailing over its icy surface. Despite its crumbling state, an unmistakable power lingered, sending a shiver through his bones. He was drawn in by the mysteries this place concealed, sensing the allure of answers to questions he hadn't even thought to ask. It was Alara who first felt it, an elusive presence hovering in the chamber, like a soft whisper just beyond the reach of hearing, a shadow weaving through the darkness. "We're not alone," she murmured, her voice a gentle ripple that disturbed the silence. Out of the shadows, a figure took form, a spirit, shimmering as though crafted from the very mist that cloaked the village. It wore the face of a monk, its eyes deep, endless wells of sorrow. A chill crept up Thalen's spine as the spirit fixed its gaze on him. This was the guardian of the Abbey's secrets, the custodian of its forgotten rites. "Why do you intrude upon the rest of the departed?" the spirit murmured, its voice echoing the soft, mournful whisper of autumn leaves. Thalen cleared his throat, trying to soothe the dryness that clung like dust. "We're looking for the truth, noble spirit," he said, his voice steady but edged with desperation. "The truth hidden in these old stones might be what saves Daromir." The spirit's form wavered, its outline blurring into the surrounding air, as if it might disappear on the exhale of a breath. "Salvation," it murmured, the words steeped in the burden of centuries. "So, without giving something up, you can't really be saved." Alara moved closer, her hands outstretched and pleading. "All right, let's do whatever it takes to make the offering. We just want to lift this curse from here. The spirit looked upon them, its eyes as deep and endless as the void. In people's hearts, there's a darkness deeper than any curse haunting this place. Dr. Malus, who had been silent up to this point, let out a soft, unsettling chuckle. Darkness, he murmured. A friend is like a constant companion, as reliable as the stars. His words weaving through the chamber like tendrils of smoke. The spirit fixed its gaze on him, its form growing more distinct with a surge of intent. Watch out for the shadows you keep nearby. They might end up consuming you. With those words hanging in the air, the spirit began to fade, its existence slowly unraveling into the ether. The room, now hushed and still, held only the echo of its warning in the heavy silence. Thalen stood in the chamber, the weight of emptiness bearing down on him like a heavy shroud. He felt the loss acutely, a sharp pang that echoed in the silence around him. "We gotta keep moving," he finally murmured, his voice steady, even as doubt cast long shadows in the recesses of Alara nodded, her eyes shimmering with tears she refused to let fall. The journey of faith's full of challenges, but we can't let that get us down. Side by side, they stepped away from the altar and began retracing their path through the passage, the scribe's lantern casting flickering shadows that danced along the walls. Stepping back into the shadowed corridors of the abbey, Thalen sensed the heavy presence of invisible eyes upon them, the lingering gaze of souls long departed, observing in silence, waiting with bated breath. The road stretched before them, its course uncertain, scattered with fragments of hope and despair like broken glass underfoot. Yet they pressed on side by side, united by the bonds of their quest, and the shadows that lingered, nestled deep within their hearts. In the distance, the wolf let out another haunting howl, a sorrowful echo that hinted at the challenges still lying ahead. In the dim light of twilight, Daromir lay hushed, the fog creeping in like a ghostly tide to wash away the day's transgressions. Thalen and his companions lingered at the boundary of this mist-shrouded realm, their minds weighed down by the haunting images of what they'd witnessed and the secrets still veiled in shadows. Dr. Malus hovered on the outskirts, his thoughts swirling wildly like the storm-laden sky overhead. His eyes, dark and mysterious, hinted at secrets as profound as the ocean's depths, his mind balanced precariously between discovery and destruction. Alara observed him intently, a blend of curiosity and caution swirling in her chest. Her heart was tugged by the visions that haunted her, truths teasing just out of reach, like shadows flitting at the edge of her mind. The scribe sat in silence, his quill dancing across the pages of his journal. It captured the interplay of shadows and light, preserving the echoes of their journey with each delicate scratch. Thalen stood resolute, his determination as solid as the stone beneath him, his eyes fixed on the distant forest, a shadowy realm that beckoned with the allure of secrets yet to be uncovered. In the heart of Daromir, the abbey loomed like a silent guardian, its secrets as old as the earth's own bones. These mysteries lay dormant, poised to be unearthed, ready to challenge the very depths of their souls. The road stretched before them, perilous and shadowed, yet within their hearts a small flame of hope danced. It was the hope that, once the truth emerged from its hiding place, it would cast a glow bright enough to pierce through the darkness that enveloped them all. In the end, it was only by wandering through the shadows that they discovered the light. They found themselves poised on the edge of a new beginning, ready to confront whatever mysteries awaited beyond the shrouded mist of time. Haunted by the murmurs of days gone by and enticed by the allure of what was yet to come, they felt an irresistible pull forward. Chapter 6. Rituals of the Forgotten. As the ancient doors creaked open, a gust of stale air escaped the sanctum, heavy with the scent of time dried up and prayers long forsaken. The companions lingered at the threshold, caught between hesitation and an undeniable pull, as though the shadows beyond reached out with bony fingers, urging them forward. The silence that once filled the corridor gave way to an echo of whispers, reminiscent of ghosts murmuring within the stone walls. Thalen was the first to move, the soft clink of his armor barely audible in the suffocating gloom. One by one, the others fell in behind him, each propelled by their own hidden urges, each concealing secrets buried deep within. The chamber stretched out vast and endless, a cathedral of shadows that felt as if it continued forever. Stone columns rose skyward, their tops swallowed by darkness, like ancient giants frozen in time, still holding up the heavens. At the far end stood an altar, looming and imposing, shrouded in the tattered remains of faith, its frayed banners embroidered with symbols from a forgotten era. The air hung heavy, thick with the echoes of incantations, and the very walls seemed to pulse with a sinister energy. Alara, the banished nun, hesitated at the entrance, her eyes wide open, seemingly blind, yet perceiving more than anyone else. Her visions had led them to this very spot, the core of the Abbey's hidden truth. She trembled, not from the chill in the air, but from the heavy burden of the revelations that weighed down on her soul. "It's here," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper, brushing softly against the cold stone. They were doing the ritual, chasing eternity, just like the ancestors. Thalen shifted, the shadows beneath his helm deepening as he fixed his gaze on Alara. "Alara," he murmured, a hint. She shut her eyes, allowing the visions to wash over her mind. The spirits of bygone days threaded their narratives into her consciousness, spinning tales of desperation and pride. "I see 'em all gathered over there," she whispered. "The villagers' ancestors talk about living forever, escaping the limits of being human. But their words are twisted, their dreams turned into something monstrous." Malus, the plague doctor, tensed at her words, his expression hidden behind the mask. "They were close," he murmured, his voice barely more than a whisper, like a serpent's hiss. "Closer than ever before. If only—" His voice faded, his thoughts obscured by the shadows of his mask. Thalen's eyes narrowed as they settled on Malus, suspicion etched across his face. "What do you know about this, Malus? You talk like these rituals mean something personal to you." The silence of the plague doctor was almost unbearable, a heavy curtain that concealed his mysteries. Without uttering a word, he glided toward the altar. His fingers danced through the air above it, searching for something invisible to the eye. Nearby, the scribe watched intently, his quill darting across the page, desperate to capture every nuance of the unfolding scene, immortalizing it in ink and parchment. As the torches sputtered and cast their wavering glow, the group moved cautiously towards the altar. Hewn from a single piece of obsidian, it stood ominously, its surface alive with runes that emitted a faint, eerie glow, an unholy light that seemed to siphon away the brightness from the room itself. Thalen stretched out his hand, fingertips lightly skimming the surface. A cold shiver coursed through him, as if he had disturbed something ancient and alive. The stone under his touch thrummed gently, sending a subtle vibration deep into his bones. "It's alive," he breathed, retreating a step, his voice a mix of wonder and dread. Alara nodded, her gaze drifting into the distance. "Their rituals have tied them to this place. Their spirits are stuck between worlds, always chasing the immortality they never got." Malus let out a laugh, one that carried no joy. "Immortality," he mused. "It's just something made up a fool's chase, but they weren't fools at all. They had knowledge and secrets that could change reality itself." Thalen's eyes narrowed, a shadow passing over his face. "And you, Malus?" he asked. The plague doctor pivoted, the flickering torchlight dancing eerily over his mask. "I really want to understand, Sir Thalen. You've experienced it. Knowledge can be a double-edged sword. Still, it's a power you just can't ignore." The air between Thalen and Malus was thick with tension, like a storm gathering strength, ready to burst at any moment. They stood facing each other, words unspoken but understood, caught in a silent struggle. Their destinies were intertwined, yet their desires pulled them. In Alara's voice, sliced through the silence, laced with urgency. "We can't stay here any longer. The spirits are getting restless. They hate being disturbed." The scribe lifted his gaze from the parchment, his eyes widening with a silent terror that spoke volumes. With a trembling hand, he pointed first to the cryptic runes, then to the pages of the journal. The message was unmistakable. Something was unfolding, something that eluded their grasp and comprehension. In response, the runes erupted with a fierce brightness, throwing a ghastly glow across the chamber. A deep, mournful moan resonated through the air, a sound steeped in sorrow and yearning, as if the walls themselves were caught in a lament. Thalon took a cautious step backward, his fingers instinctively curling around the hilt of his sword. "We need to leave this place immediately," he implored, his tone carrying an unmistakable sense of urgency. "Whatever's hanging around here, it's not meant for us." Malus paused, his gaze fixed on the altar, a storm of uncertainty swirling inside him. Yet, with a deep breath and a heavy heart, he nodded, a reluctant surrender to Thalon's command. The group turned, retreating from the sanctum as shadows crept in behind them, almost alive in their pursuit. Crossing the threshold, Elara couldn't resist a final glance back, her heart weighed down by the haunting visions she carried. "We're not alone," she murmured, her voice barely more than a shadow in the enveloping darkness. Once they passed through the door, Thalon closed it with a heavy heart. The echoes of their footsteps slowly faded, swallowed by the silence. Yet the cold of the sanctum lingered like a ghostly shadow, wrapping around them as they made their way back through the abbey. The moon sagged in the sky, a pale ghost clinging to the horizon. Fog rolled in, heavy and dense, veiling the village of Daromir in a cloak of mystery. Silent houses stood like mourners at a funeral, their stillness echoing the hush of the night. They halted at the edge of the abbey grounds, the weight of their discovery settling heavily on their shoulders. The path before them remained as obscure as ever, shadows looming larger, mysteries yet to unravel. Thalon glanced at his companions, his voice carrying a steady resolve, tinged with urgency. "We've glimpsed what awaits us here, and we're well aware of the peril it brings. Yet there is still so much hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be unraveled. We have to move forward, but let's tread carefully." Malus gave a slight nod, his eyes shrouded in shadow, yet his purpose unmistakable. "Knowledge doesn't stick around, Sir Thalon, and neither do I." Elara glanced between them, her visions shifting like sand slipping away beneath her feet. "We've got to be careful," she murmured, her voice tinged with unease. "The spirits are on edge, still wanting something. They won't let us go without a fight." The scribe, always silent, simply nodded, his very presence a quiet witness to the story that was slowly coming to life. Side by side, they left the abbey behind, stepping into the fog-draped village. Daromir seemed to hold its breath, like a sleeping beast lying in wait, its secrets tucked away in the shadows of memory and time. As they strolled onward, the wind murmured secrets through the trees, blending the earthy aroma of decay with the tantalizing hint of revelations waiting just beyond the horizon. They pressed on, venturing deeper into the heart of darkness, their destinies tangled with those who had walked this path before, driven by the same desires and haunted by the same fears. In the shadows, the past and present entwined in a haunting waltz, where forgotten dreams floated like specters and whispered promises lingered just out of reach. In the end, it was only by navigating the shadows that they discovered the light. Enveloped in the swirling mist, the companions ventured forward, each step taking them deeper into a haze of uncertainty. The path ahead was obscured, whispering secrets of a truth that would test the foundations of all they held dear and bring them face to face with their darkest fears. In the heart of Daromir, whispers of the forgotten began to stir, awakening beneath the light of newfound clarity. The past stretched its spectral hand to entwine with the present. Chapter 7: Tethered Spirits. The Abbey of Daromir loomed against the somber sky, its ancient stones breathing out the cold of forgotten centuries. A thick mist wove itself around the ground, curling like a serpent around the feet of Sir Thalon and his companions as they ventured through the decaying archway. Within, shadows draped the walls like cobwebs, murmuring ghostly secrets from the past, secrets that time could never quite erase. Elara, the outcast nun with eyes as turbulent as storm clouds, lingered at the threshold, her breath a ghostly mist in the frigid air. Her fingers brushed against the stone walls, feeling the ancient stories carved into their surface. The abbey seemed alive, sighing with the whispers of old prayers and the haunting cries of souls who once sought solace within its sacred halls. There, she murmured, a secret only she could comprehend. Ever since they set foot in Darrowmere, her visions had sharpened to an unsettling clarity. The spirits of the lost unveiled themselves to her, their presence stark and undeniable. She saw them, bound to this land by rituals that had devoured their souls, specters trapped between realms, their eyes as empty as hollow moons. Sir Thalen advanced, the clank of his armored boots echoing off the flagstones in a somber chorus. He cut a figure of worn dignity, the knight who had seen better days. Beneath the shadow of his visor, his face was etched with scars from battles fought both in the world and within his own soul. His mind was its own war zone, plagued by specters not unlike those Alara glimpsed, yet his were the ghosts of memories, the faces of fallen comrades whispering from the depths of his troubled conscience. His steps stumbled as echoes from his past surged, blurring the lines of reality. A voice, familiar and full of reproach, brushed against his ears. "Thalen, you could have saved us," it murmured, a rasping lament that pierced deeper than any blade. He shook his head, desperately trying to dispel the ghosts of guilt that clung to him, pulling him into the shadows. Next to them stood the mute scribe, a slight figure enveloped in shadows, burdened by a silence full of untold stories. His fingers gently traced the brittle pages of a journal freshly unearthed, its leather cover cracked and worn by time. Inside, the writing was a frantic scrawl, capturing the abbey's slow spiral into madness, a tale of obsession and despair, recorded by a hand that had long since turned to dust. With reverent care, he turned each page, his eyes widening as he absorbed tales of alchemical failures and misplaced faith. The journal spoke of a time when the abbey stood as a beacon of hope, a sanctuary where the divine and the empirical strained to find a fragile harmony. Yet something had gone terribly wrong. The words hinted a catastrophic clash of belief and science that had unleashed a curse upon Darrowmere. Alara's eyes were locked on the ghostly gathering only visible to her, and her focus seemed to slip into another world. Her gaze became distant, as if she were floating among the spirits themselves, their whispers weaving a tapestry of sighs around her. "Why do you linger?" she whispered, her voice a gentle plea to the apparitions. "What keeps you stuck here in this depressing place?" Thalen, still wrestling with his own inner demons, found himself drawn to her, intrigued by the way she spoke as if to someone unseen. Despite the heavy shadow of her banishment and the social stain it left, he had come to rely on Alara's uncanny insight. In this realm of shadows, he sensed that her visions might be the vital clue needed to untangle the mystery that held them all captive. The plague doctor stood among them, a shadowy figure whose mask concealed his eyes behind gleaming lenses. He was as enigmatic as the mist that veiled the valley, a riddle wrapped in the mystery of the abbey's history. With a silent vigilance, he watched everything unfold, his true intentions buried deep beneath veils of secrecy and doubt. "The spirits," Alara said, her voice gaining strength as she spoke to her companions, "they're stuck here, caught by something left unfinished. They were promised eternity, but now they're just suffering. The rituals that were supposed to take them beyond mortality didn't work. Now they're trapped, tied to the stone and shadows, unable to get away from what wasn't completed." Thalen pondered her words, his mind swirling with a storm of unanswered questions. "What were they trying to do?" he murmured, his voice heavy with the burden of his journey. "What makes people go to such extremes, giving up everything just for the chance of something better on the other side?" The scribe, perpetually the quiet spectator, raised the journal for Thalen's inspection, indicating a specific passage with a steady finger. The knight leaned in, eyes narrowing as he tried to make sense of the hurried scrawl. It told of a ritual, a mysterious blend of faith and alchemy designed to reveal the soul's hidden truths, to close the gap between the divine and the earthly. Yet just as the tale began to unfold, it stopped short, leaving a trail of unanswered questions hanging in the air. 57 hubris, Thalen murmured, the word carrying the weight of that age-old story where humanity endlessly battles its own boundaries. They thought they could mess with the natural order, trying to trap the divine and make it do what they wanted. Alara nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving the restless spirits. "They're paying the price now," she whispered, her tone carrying a subtle hint of melancholy. "It's like they're stuck in a loop of despair, weighed down by stories that never got told." The plague doctor, who had been standing quietly, adjusted his position, catching the group's attention. "We've got to get it done then," he said, his voice a deep murmur from behind the mask. "To free them, we've got to figure out what's still hanging and see it through." His words lingered in the air, a mix of challenge and promise woven together. Thalen felt a shiver run through him, a whisper of the trials that lay ahead. They had embarked on a treacherous path, a journey that insisted they face not only the shadows cloaking the abbey, but also those lurking within their own hearts. As they ventured further into the abbey's shadowy corridors, the walls seemed to close in, enveloping them in a claustrophobic embrace of stone. The air turned colder, the chill creeping into their bones, as if the very building intended to ward them off, protecting its secrets with a jealous vigilance against their unwelcome intrusion. Deep within the abbey, they stumbled upon a chamber that had been sealed for centuries, its door bearing symbols of protection that had long faded into obscurity. The air inside was stale, untouched by time's relentless march. Alara felt her heart quicken as she sensed the spirits crowding this forgotten space, their energy a tangible force in the shadowy gloom. Thalen unsheathed his sword, the blade slicing through the air with a sound as haunting as a requiem. The scribe clutched the journal tightly to his chest, its pages a frail barrier against the mysteries ahead. Meanwhile, the plague doctor, always the enigmatic guardian, stood watch, his silence only amplifying the depth of his gaze. Alara moved forward, her footsteps whispering softly against the chamber's cold stone. She closed her eyes, letting her awareness stretch beyond the tangible, searching for the threads that held the spirits captive to this place. When she finally spoke, her voice was a chant, a prayer and a plea for peace intertwined in each word. As her voice echoed through the chamber, the very stones seemed to shudder, sending ripples of unease through the air. The spirits stirred in response, their ethereal bodies weaving in and out of form, merging light and shadow into a dance of indistinct faces, each one brimming with an unspoken yearning. Thalen stood there, mesmerized, as Alara's words spun a delicate weave of hope and liberation. It was as if ethereal fingers gently touched his soul, offering a forgiveness he hadn't realized he yearned for. The ghosts of his past appeared to fade away, their grip on him loosening as the spirits finally began to find their own peace. The scribe sensed the shift as well, his eyes gleaming with an insight that went beyond mere words. The plague doctor, though concealed behind his mask, appeared to nod in quiet agreement, as if finally accepting a truth he had resisted for so long. In that fleeting moment, the chains that held the spirits captive began to dissolve, their ethereal forms vanishing like mist in the early morning sun. The chamber slowly brightened, suffused with a gentle glow that filled the air with a warmth whispering of redemption and release. As the final spirit slipped away into the shadows, Alara slowly opened her eyes. A serene calm washed over her features. "It's done," she murmured, her voice a soft, relieved breath. The spell has finally been lifted. Even though the ghosts of Daramir had finally found peace, the companions sensed that their journey was far from complete. The abbey still held its secrets tightly, shadows swirling with a dark restlessness. Yet in this fleeting moment, they stood at the brink of newfound understanding, their hearts a touch lighter for the souls they had liberated. As they prepared to depart, the scribe hesitated, his gaze catching on a last, enigmatic line scribbled in the journal. It was a solitary sentence, the writing trembling with fear. "Beware the one who wears the mask, for he guards the final truth." A shiver snaked down Thalen's spine as the weight of those words wrapped around him like a suffocating shroud. The plague doctor remained an enigma, his motives hidden in shadows. Yet one thing was clear, their path stretched on, and when the truth finally emerged, it would upend everything. As the shadows kept a silent vigil, they emerged from the abbey, stepping once more into the unpredictable world beyond. Their fates remained intertwined, their journey ahead shrouded in uncertainty. Yet deep within their hearts, a delicate flame of hope flickered, a promise softly spoken by the spirits now at peace, finally having found their way home. They pushed onward, venturing further into the heart of darkness, unaware of the storm lurking just beyond the horizon. The past, with its relentless grip, was poised to seize them once again. 62 Word count 2,465. Chapter 8. The Plague Doctor's Mask. The ancient walls of the abbey seemed to groan under the heavy burden of forgotten years as Sir Thalin guided his companions through its twisting corridors. Shadows lingered in the corners like stubborn specters, murmuring secrets from a bygone era. Their footsteps reverberated in the cavernous silence, each step feeling like an unwelcome intrusion into a place where time had long since stopped. The air was dense with the musty smell of damp stone and decay, mingling with the faint, biting tang of past alchemical failures. Thalin's mind churned, a storm of doubt and determination clashing violently within him. The journal's warning echoed relentlessly. Beware the one who wears the mask. He cast a wary glance at Dr. Malus, who moved with a calculated grace, his dark cloak swirling like ink in water. The plague doctor's beaked mask, hiding his face, seemed to stare out at the world with empty, unsettling eyes. As they stepped into the heart of the abbey, they found themselves in a vast chamber where shelves, heavy with dusty tomes and crumbling scrolls, seemed to groan under their own weight. In the center loomed a massive table, its surface a chaotic tableau of past experiments. Vials filled with swirling liquids jostled for space alongside mortars crusted with dried herbs, and strange instruments lay scattered, their purposes long forgotten. An unsettling energy vibrated through the air, as if the very walls had absorbed the sins of those who had lingered here, whispering their dark history to anyone who dared to listen. Malus hesitated, his gloved fingers gently tracing the worn edges of the parchment. The silence lingered, a fragile thread on the verge of breaking. Thalin watched him closely, feeling the charged atmosphere and the gradual revelation of secrets that had been hidden for so long. Thalin? Malus's voice finally emerged, thick and muffled, as though it had traveled a long way from the depths of a well. Do you grasp why we're really here? Thalin's eyes narrowed, a flicker of doubt shadowing his gaze. I'm here to dig up the truth about the Darrowmere curse, he said, though his voice Malus faced him, the mask shifting his appearance into a blend of human and ethereal. Ah, the curse, you say. But curses, those are just the beginning, a mere glimpse of what truly lurks beneath. Within these walls, there's a force capable of bending faith and reason alike, a force wasted by those too blind to see its potential. The impact of his words hung heavily in the air, creating a rift between them that seemed vast enough to consume Thalin entirely. He sensed an irresistible draw toward something shadowy and seductive, like a siren's song whispering promises of redemption, though it demanded the ultimate price, his very soul. Thalin's voice was rough, like gravel scraping against stone. What are you looking for, Malus? He asked, the question hanging heavily in the knowledge, Malus murmured with a hint of awe in his voice. They were doing experiments here to capture the essence of life and try to beat death. Just imagine what we could achieve if we succeeded where they failed. The power we'd have would be unbelievable. Thalin's heart drummed wildly in his chest, the pull of such immense power both frightening and irresistibly alluring. Years had slipped by as he fled from the shadows of his past, haunted by the blood that marked his hands and the honor he had squandered. Now, a chance lay before him, a chance to seize something greater, to ascend from the smoldering ruins of his own downfall. Still, a part of him shrank back, a shadow of the man he used to be, clinging to ideals he had long since cast aside. But at what cost, Malus? How many more lives have to be sacrificed for this dream? Malus, her gaze hidden behind the mask, seemed to pierce straight into Thalin's very being. Every big effort comes with a cost. If you're not willing to pay up, you'll just end up watching from the sidelines as history unfolds. Thalin stood there, a storm brewing quietly inside him. His eyes drifted to Ilara, who lingered at the room's periphery, her complexion ghostly as if she were trapped in a nightmare only she could perceive. Her eyes, wide and filled with dread, reached out to him, silently beseeching as if to share the burden of the terror she'd witnessed. Meanwhile, the scribe, forever the spectral onlooker, scratched away obsessively, his quill etching their entwined destinies into the paper. "Elara?" Thalen called softly. "What do you see?" She blinked slowly, as though emerging from a deep dream. When she finally spoke, her voice was a delicate whisper, hardly more than a sigh. "I see. Shadows on top of shadows. There's a darkness that's hungry, feeding on every little whisper of despair. It eats up everything, Thalen, leaving just the faintest echoes behind." Her words sent a shiver down his spine, mirroring the chaos that churned in his own heart. He faced Malus, his determination solidifying like iron forged in fire. "I can't let you keep going, Malus. The power you're after just isn't worth what it costs." The plague doctor chuckled, his voice a deep, resonant growl that seemed to meld with the encroaching shadows. "Thalen, you're such a fool," he remarked, his tone laced with a shadowy sense of humor. "Holding on to those ideals of yours, there's no room for them in this world." The chamber suddenly felt like it was closing in, the walls creeping closer, heavy with an oppressive weight. Thalen's hand instinctively found the hilt of his sword, a comforting presence amidst the chaos, even as doubt whispered at the edges of his resolve. The room erupted into chaos. Malus lunged forward, gripping a vial filled with a swirling darkness that seemed almost alive. Thalen drew his. "This is the plague doctor," let out a wheezing laugh, a sound twisted with agony. "Ha, you might have beaten me, but the shadows, they're already closing in on you." As Malus uttered his last words, he crumpled to the ground like a marionette, suddenly severed from its strings. Thalen couldn't bear to watch, turning his gaze aside, the heavy burden of his deeds pressing relentlessly upon his soul. Elara drew near, her eyes gleaming with a brightness that cut through the thick shadows. "The darkness hasn't claimed victory yet, Thalen. There's still hope, and a path we haven't explored." The scribe, a quiet observer of the unfolding drama, captured the last words of their struggle. His eyes glimmered with a secret understanding, a knowledge shared only with the shadows around him. With the echoes of their clash still reverberating in his mind, Thalen turned his back on the fallen plague doctor. The path ahead was strangely clearer, yet shrouded in uncertainty. The abbey's secrets lay exposed, but his journey was far from its end. Beyond those ancient walls, the village of Daromir loomed, its mysteries hidden in the swirling fog, waiting to be unraveled. Stepping into the cool embrace of night, they left the abbey behind, a silent witness to the shadows of the past, whispering tales of loss and lingering hope. In the distance, the low growl of thunder hinted at a storm gathering on the horizon, as if the past itself was stretching out its hand, determined to reclaim them. Amidst the encroaching darkness, a delicate flame of hope flickered. It was a promise softly murmured by the tethered spirits still searching for their way home. Chapter 9. Descent into Madness. Night cloaked the village of Daromir like a heavy, suffocating tapestry, its shadowy threads winding tightly around the reluctant group as they trudged back into its heart. The air was thick with the promise of rain, pregnant with a scent that hinted at storms to come. Fog wrapped itself around the village, a ghostly shroud that seemed to breathe and murmur secrets only the unhinged might understand. Sir Thalen walked at the forefront of the somber procession, his armor dulled beneath the pale light of the moon, like a shadow of its once magnificent self. Every creak from his joints echoed like a dirge, a sorrowful reminder of past glories now tainted by guilt and the haunting marks of memory. He could feel the eyes upon him, not only from his companions, but also from the unseen and restless spirits that danced through the mist. Behind him, the scribe glided in a silence so ghostly it seemed to defy the chaos of the moment. The mute chronicler had melded with the shadows, becoming as elusive as the specters they hunted. His fingers, perpetually ink-stained, captured the whispers of a tale that appeared to be unfolding on its own. Elara, the nun cast out from her convent, moved as if in a dream, her eyes wide and unfocused, seeing past the here and now into worlds hidden from ordinary eyes. Her visions had grown stronger, more insistent, each flash of the past pulling her further adrift. She gripped her habit tightly, her fingers shaking, the fabric her lone tether in a swirling ocean of ghostly images. The plague doctor's departure left a haunting emptiness in his wake, a void that seemed to swallow the very essence of the group. Once a malevolent shadow among them, his dark schemes had at last come undone, and now the group felt more fractured than ever. Yet his final words clung to them like a lingering curse, mingling with every breath they took, a chilling reminder of the darkness lurking both within their hearts and in the world around them. As they stepped over the village's threshold, the wind began to howl, wailing through the eaves of decaying homes like a banshee mourning what it had lost. The village was a mere ghost of itself, every building whispering tales of desolation. Blind windows stared vacantly into the void, while doors creaked open, as if protesting their own unwilling survival. Thalen stopped in the middle of the square, his eyes lingering on the dilapidated fountain. Once it had bubbled with life, but now it was merely a basin of cracked stone, overtaken by creeping moss. Memories crashed over him without warning, relentless in their torment. They dragged him back to a similar village, a past mission where his decisions had spiraled into disaster. The screams of the innocents, mingled with the harsh clang of steel, had shadowed his every move ever since. He clenched his fists tightly, the leather of his gloves groaning under the strain. The ghost of his disgrace loomed over him, its shadow weaving through the fog like a haunting reminder of his downfall. Once he had been charged with bringing salvation, but he'd ended up planting seeds of despair instead, now surrounded by the crumbling remnants of Daromir. He couldn't shake the feeling that history was relentlessly dragging him back into its grim cycle. A hand grazed his shoulder, delicate as a moth's wing in flight. He turned to see Alara standing beside him, her eyes shimmering with an otherworldly glow, the visions within her swirling like a tempest barely contained. "They were just trying to save themselves," she whispered, her voice barely a wisp in the suffocating silence. "A desperate, forbidden ritual meant to cleanse the abbey and bring them closer to their god, but it backfired, trapping them here forever." Thalen felt a chill grip his heart, a heavy certainty sinking into his very bones. "You saw it yourself?" She nodded, her eyes lost in thought. The abbey's chambers echoed with chants, the air thick with incense and a real sense of fear. They believed so deeply, but it was that belief that sealed their fate. The spirits hang around, not because of the ritual, but because they're stuck in their own despair. Her words cut through the silence like a bitter balm, laying bare the tragedy that had seeped through the ancient stone walls of the abbey. What once promised salvation had contorted into a tangled maze of despair, where souls were trapped by the very faith they had once held so dear. The group lingered in the silent square as night wrapped them in its deepening embrace. An oppressive weight, heavy with secrets still hidden, cloaked them like a burial shroud. On the horizon, the storm they'd been anticipating loomed closer, its thunder a distant growl that promised a coming reckoning. Thalen exchanged a solemn nod with Alara before turning his gaze to the abbey, its silhouette a haunting presence against the moonlit sky. The path ahead brimmed with unease, yet it was the only way forward. They would go back to the abbey, plunge deeper into its secrets, and uncover the answers that continued to slip through their fingers. Their journey back unfolded in wordless understanding, each step a solemn rhythm against the earth's surface. The abbey's gates lay slightly open, like a dark mouth inviting them into its mysterious depths. Crossing the threshold, the atmosphere changed. An electric tension hung in the air, making Thalen's nerves tingle with unease. The abbey's interior felt like stepping into a world of shadows, where corridors twisted and turned like the innards of some great beast. Each corner presented a silent choice, salvation or damnation. Here, the boundary between reality and hallucination seemed to waver, with every creak of the floorboards whispering secrets of the unseen. Ilara moved ahead, her path illuminated by visions that danced like candle flames in the shadows of her mind. The scribe trailed after her, recording each moment with quiet accuracy, his eyes lingering on the stained glass windows. These windows, once vibrant with tales of yore, now lay broken and fragmented. As they ventured further down, the air turned icy, and the stone walls seemed to close in with a suffocating threat. It felt as though the abbey itself breathed with a sinister life, its very bones haunted by the spirits of those who had suffered within. The heavy burden of their anguish pressed upon the group, straining the delicate bonds that held their uneasy alliance together. Amidst the silent, shadowed halls of the abbey, they stumbled upon it, a chamber where time seemed to have held its breath. At its core lay a circle of chalk and symbols, their edges softened by the years, yet still vibrating with a lingering power. It was here that the ritual had once taken place, a fervent cry to the heavens, met only with silence. Thalen lingered at the circle's perimeter, feeling his heart heavy as stone within his chest. The walls around him seemed to murmur with the ghosts of his past failures, each whisper a sharp reminder of what blind faith had cost him. Yet, woven into the fabric of his despair, a glimmer of insight emerged, a faint hope that perhaps the abbey's destiny was still unwritten. Ilara stepped into the circle, eyes shut tight, her lips whispering a silent prayer. The air shimmered around her, as if the very fabric of reality was beginning to unravel. Visions flooded her mind, reaching a fever pitch. She witnessed the final moments of the monks, their faces a haunting blend of fear and hope, their voices lifting in a hymn that echoed to the rafters. In that fleeting moment, clarity struck Thalen like a bolt of lightning. The monks' ritual hadn't faltered due to a lack of faith. It was their despair, deeply entrenched, that had sealed their fate. Their belief had morphed into a shackle, tethering them to their own overwhelming sorrow. As the truth settled in, the chamber seemed to breathe out, its oppressive weight easing just a touch. Hope flickered like a delicate flame, fighting against the surrounding shadows. Though they had unveiled the secret behind the abbey's curse, their journey was far from over. Thalen faced his companions, determination glinting in his eyes. "We have to release them," he declared, his voice unwavering. "It's the only way to break the curse." Ilara locked eyes with him, determination etched across her face. "And what about us, Thalen? What about those shadows always following us around?" A somber smile ghosted across his face, one born from battles fought and losses endured. "We'll face them," he murmured, "together." As the echoes of their past intermingled with the restless spirits of the abbey, the group braced themselves for the challenges that loomed ahead. The road was perilous, yet it was a journey they would undertake together, bound by shared resolve. As they stepped out of the chamber, the storm finally gave way, unleashing a torrent of rain that pummeled the stone walls with a cleansing fury. The abbey loomed like a steadfast guardian in the night, standing as a testament to the eternal battle between light and shadow. As the first light of dawn gently broke over the horizon, a new chapter unfolded, poised to challenge their resolve and reveal the hidden depths of Daromir's secrets. Casting one last look at the spot where shadows clung stubbornly, Thalen guided his companions back to the waking world. Their footsteps were resolute and unwavering. Deep within the dark, they had discovered a glimmer of light, a quiet vow that the past would not seal their fate. Together they ventured into the storm, stepping beyond its swirling chaos, where the unknown lay waiting. In the village of Daromir, every soul seemed to hold its breath, anticipating what lay just beyond the horizon. Chapter 10. The Heart of the Abyss. The abbey seemed to breathe with a darkness that felt almost alive. Its once grand arches, now mere skeletal silhouettes, were cloaked in shadows, with every corner murmuring the echoes of forgotten spells. Sir Thalen halted at the entrance, his breath a ghostly mist in the cold air of the abandoned sanctuary. Outside, rain tapped a relentless beat against the ancient stones, a mournful melody guiding them deeper into the abyss. Beside him, Ilara, the banished nun, clung tightly to a small crucifix, her fingers trembling with a mix of fear and determination. Her cryptic, haunting visions had led them to this point, yet the core of the abbey concealed secrets that even her foresight strained to unveil. Her gaze darted around the chamber, searching for comfort in the familiar, but finding only the unsettling presence of specters lurking just beyond the edge of her perception. "Here?" Thalen whispered, his voice a rough breath against the suffocating quiet. This was the spot where faith had been defiled, where the sacred blend of spirit and matter had been grotesquely distorted. He sensed the walls pressing in, like a hungry beast poised to devour them. Malus stood in the heart of the chamber, his shadow etched against the flickering light of a dying brazier. The figure of the masked plague doctor loomed ominously, a chilling echo of the abbey's most harrowing times. Though his eyes were concealed, they seemed to pierce through the gloom, locked onto the stone altar where the final ritual had once played out. "So, you have finally arrived?" Malus said, his voice resonating through the chamber like a funeral bell tolling from afar. "Are you here to witness the culmination of your sins, Sir Thalen, or is it atonement you seek?" Thalen braced himself as he stepped over the threshold, the comforting weight of his armor grounding him against the unseen. "We're here to get the truth, Malus, the truth buried under all your lies." The scribe, a quiet figure wrapped in the remnants of dust and ink, stepped forward, clutching the journal as if it were a lifeline. Though he uttered not a single word, his very presence was a testament, his eyes illuminated by the secrets etched into those pages, a frantic map of the past. The chamber lay steeped in decay, a silent witness to the final rites that had once played out within its walls. Whispers of the past lingered in the air, heavy and haunting. The altar stood before it all, scarred and charred, a testament to the alchemical ambitions gone awry. The dark stains of their misguided attempts revealed the folly of those who dared to breach the boundaries of life itself. Lingering spirits clung to the cold stone, bound by rituals that had pledged eternal life but yielded only endless sorrow. Alara's voice cut through the heavy silence, a haunting melody filled with both defiance and desperation. "This place is cursed," she declared, her words echoing with a raw, pained urgency. "You went after immortality and ended up with nothing but decay. Let them go, Malus. Set them free." Malus turned, his mask a haunting sign of death's arrival. "You talk of release, but you have no idea what you're asking for. These souls are tied to me by their own decisions, their destinies hopelessly linked with mine." His eyes then locked on to Thalen, piercing through the shadows. "And you, faithless knight, will become one of them." The scribe gasped, breaking the silence, and his fingers flew over the journal's worn pages. Everything he discovered, every secret tucked away in those fragile leaves, was their weapon against Malus's dark plans. "Look," Thalen urged, motioning for the scribe to reveal what he'd found. The mute pointed out a passage, one Malus had overlooked. It was a cipher, a ritual to break the spell written in the margins, a way to counter the final rite. Malus staggered back, his once solid confidence now shattered by the truth that had just hit him. "No!" exclamation mark. He cried out, his voice cracking, and the mask he wore shattered, showing the wild desperation underneath. "You can't unravel." The scribe's hand danced through the heavy, dust-choked air, tracing symbols with a practiced grace as he murmured the ancient incantations. The chamber pulsed with a raw electric energy, stirring the spirits from their long slumber. Their whispers swelled, a haunting chorus of longing that echoed through the shadows. Alara's voice wove into the scribe's silent invocation, her faith serving as a channel for power. Thalen sensed the change, the abbey's curse beginning to loosen, like a tapestry of despair slowly coming apart at the seams. Within his own mind, once a shattered reflection, clarity emerged amidst the turmoil, as the shadows of his past gave way to the illuminating light of understanding. Malus stumbled, his figure like a ghost unraveling at the seams. "You really think you've won?" he spat out, his every syllable laced with venomous conviction. "But the abyss never ends. It'll swallow you up, just like it did to me." Thalen stepped forward, his sword gleaming ominously in the shadows. "It's over, Malus. This darkness is yours to embrace." With a last defiant cry, Malus collapsed to his knees, the ritual of unbinding ripping through his very essence. The spirits surged forth, their chains shattered, a release that was as much liberation as it was oblivion. The chamber trembled. The very stones seemed to weep over the souls they could no longer hold captive. And then there was nothing but silence. The heavy weight that had pressed down on them vanished, leaving the air crisp and tinged with the unmistakable scent of rain. Thalen, Alara, and the scribe found themselves surrounded by the remnants of Melis's dreams. The chasm they had confronted now just a haunting memory etched into the stone around them. Yet, as they began to depart, Melis's last words hung in the air, a haunting echo that reminded them the darkness they had defeated was merely one of many lurking shadows. In the village of Daromir, unspoken fears still clung to the air, leaving the place trembling under their weight. Ahead lay a path fraught with danger, yet tantalizing with the promise of revelation. Each step Thalen took felt like a weight pressing down, the burden of a choice he couldn't escape, to rebuild what was lost or let the cycle of decay spin on. As they stepped into the storm's cleansing embrace, he understood that the shadows of Daromir wouldn't vanish so easily. Though they'd silenced the heart of the abyss, its ghost lingered, a haunting reminder of the never-ending struggle between light and dark. Side by side, they braced themselves for whatever lay ahead. Together, they pledged to shape a new future out of the shattered pieces of what once was. As the rain rinsed away the last traces of their downfall, they stepped into a dawn, brimming with both promise and danger. The village of Daromir lay ahead, shrouded in mystery, its secrets beckoning like a siren's call, luring them into the enigmatic depths of the unknown. The echoes of the abbey still lingered in their minds as the trio ventured into a world transformed. Before them lay the village of Daromir, its very air thick with a quiet, expectant hush. As the storm clouds slowly rolled away, unveiling a sky tinged with the first hints of dawn, they understood that their journey was merely beginning. Chapter 11. Reckoning and Redemption. In Daromir, the air felt thick with tension, like a relentless fog that wrapped around everything, sticking to the skin and sinking into every breath. The village, with its cobbled streets and thatched rooftops, seemed to hold its breath, waiting for a storm that wasn't in the sky, but in the hearts of those brave enough to challenge the encroaching darkness. Sir Thalen stood there, his armor dulled and his heart weighed down, teetering on the edge of destiny. Once a noble knight, he was now a man shaped by shadows, endlessly chasing redemption. The abbey loomed ahead, casting a grotesque silhouette against the encroaching twilight. Its spires jutted upward like skeletal fingers, as if trying to grasp the indifferent heavens. Each stone seemed to carry the murmurs of the long departed, with the haunting echoes of forgotten prayers whispering through its hollow passageways. Thalen sensed the burden of countless eyes upon him, unseen but undeniably present, the specters of bygone days awaiting their moment of judgment. Alara walked alongside him, her presence a comforting light in the thickening darkness. Her eyes, which once brimmed with terror, now gleamed with a fierce determination, driven by visions that teetered on the brink of madness. Being cast out by the nuns had turned into an unexpected blessing, a chance to uncover a strength she never realized lay within her. She was the one who had seen the truth lurking in the shadows, the twisted remains of a ritual gone horribly wrong, a ghastly dance between life and death that trapped the spirits in this cursed place. Trailing behind the group like a shadow, the mute scribe known as Quill moved silently, his presence a calm contrast to the turmoil that surrounded them. His hands danced across the parchment with an elegant fluidity, each stroke of ink a vivid capture of the unfolding scene, a testament to their struggle, a story destined to echo through the ages. Though he uttered not a single word, his very presence communicated volumes, a silent reminder that truth often resides not in spoken words, but in those quiet moments of shared understanding. And then there was Melis, the plague doctor whose mask hid both healing truths and treacherous lies. He had fully embraced the ritual's power, with intentions that wove a tangled web of science and sorcery. His eyes gleamed with a madness born from too many years spent in shadow and too many nights lost in thought about the mysteries of life and death. He stood as the barrier between Thalen and the salvation he desperately sought, a guardian of the abyss, clutching the key to the village's redemption. The confrontation was destined to happen, a silent battle of wills unfolding beneath the abbey's decaying rafters. Thalen grasped the reassuring heft of his sword, finding solace in its weight amid the swirling uncertainty of the storm about to break. As he moved forward, his armor clinked with each step, a ringing testament to his resolve. The air was electric with anticipation, mingling the scent of damp stone and lingering incense into a potent mixture that heightened his senses. Malus. Thalen's voice rolled in like distant thunder, deep and foreboding. This is the conclusion. The spirits you've trapped are begging to be free. You've twisted faith and science into something ugly. Let them go. The plague doctor pivoted, his mask catching the faint light in a haunting parody of life. You sound like you really know, Knight, he murmured, his voice slick with conviction. But you're just scratching the surface. Letting them go would be like tossing away knowledge, trading progress for the comfort of not knowing. Ilara moved closer, her voice slicing through the thick tension in the room. When knowledge starts holding us back, Malus, it stops being progress. We've seen what's coming. We know what we have to do. A flicker of doubt shadowed Malus's face, a tiny fracture in his mask of confidence. Yet pride and desperation wove their tendrils tightly around him, anchoring him to a darkness too profound to easily shake off. He lifted his hands, tracing a complex sigil in the air, its glow casting an eerie luminescence in the gloom. Thalen lunged forward, his sword slicing through the dim light like a flash of steel lightning. Yet Malus, ever prepared, reached into the depths of his robes with uncanny swiftness, pulling out a vial filled with a shimmering liquid. It shattered between them, releasing an iridescent mist that curled and twisted through the air like a living serpent. Ilara's voice rang out with a fierce clarity amid the turmoil. Come on, Thalen. Believe in yourself, in us. We've got the power to break this cycle together. For the briefest heartbeat, the knight paused, the world whirling around him like a feverish dream filled with color and sound. In that fleeting instant, a deeper truth unfurled before him, a tapestry of entwined lives, each thread bearing witness to the relentless quest for redemption. The faces of the fallen lingered in his memory, their mournful cries echoing the plight of the lost. Yet, within their sorrowful chorus, he discovered his own path to salvation. With a newfound resolve, Thalen drove his sword deep into the core of the ritual, its blade resonating with a pure, unwavering intent. The abbey shuddered, its ancient stones quaking in protest against the profane acts taking place inside. The spirits, once ensnared by Malus's sinister schemes, surged forward, their ghostly shapes swirling in a wild dance of liberation and rage. Ilara moved with an almost otherworldly grace, her hands deftly navigating the intricate web of energy that anchored the ritual. Her voice, steady and resonant, transformed into a chant, a soulful plea not to the gods above, but to the indomitable strength of the human heart. With each word, the air around her seemed to dance and shimmer, and slowly the spirits began to dissolve, their bindings drifting to the ground like autumn leaves carried by a gentle breeze. Malus let out a scream tinged with both terror and fury as everything he knew fell apart. His mask slipped away, uncovering eyes that held a sorrow deeper than the ocean itself. Just for an instant, Thalen glimpsed the man behind the monstrous facade, a soul trapped by its own relentless ambitions. It could have been so much more, Malus murmured, his voice trailing off like a fragile whisper of regret. The shadows, waiting like old companions, wrapped around him, drawing him into the abyss he had crafted himself. As the remnants of the ritual faded into nothingness, the abbey let out a weary final breath, its energies unraveling into the ether. Freed at last, the spirits ascended into the night, their voices a joyful chorus of liberation. With the oppressive weight lifted, the air felt clearer than it had in ages. For the first time in what seemed like forever, Thalen drew a deep breath, the scent of rain and earth soothing his weary soul. He turned to Ilara, who remained silent and unmoving amidst the storm's fading echoes. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, a wordless understanding flowed between them. Among these ruins of the past, they had discovered not only redemption but also each other, companions bound in the timeless fight against the shadows. Quill stepped forward, his parchment brimming with the story of their voyage, a tapestry of past trials and future hopes. He remained silent, yet his eyes spoke volumes, expressing a gratitude too profound for mere words. Together they ventured into the dawn, which was now spilling across the horizon, awakening a new day brimming with the promise of renewal. The village of Daramir lay ahead, its secrets still buried, whispering like a siren to those brave enough to dive into the mysteries of the unknown. As Thalen and the others wandered through the shadowy forest of memories, a deep awareness settled within him. Their journey was anything but finished. The ghosts of bygone days would always hover nearby, a chilling reminder of the relentless battle between light and shadow. Yet, amidst this eternal conflict, there was a glimmer of hope, a spark of potential that blazed fiercely in the heart of a knight who had found new life. As the first rays of dawn crept over the village, bathing it in a mix of gold and silver, Thalen sensed a shift within himself. The heavy burden of his past seemed to drift away, revealing the man he had become, a figure shaped by shadows, battles, and redemption. Side by side, they would confront whatever awaited them, piecing together a future from the remnants of what had been and the possibilities of what could still unfold. Their journey pressed on, a twisting path through the mists of time. As the village of Daramir unfolded before them, they felt the truth leading their way, even into the heart of the unknown. Chapter 12. Beneath the Fog. In the village of Daramir, a fresh stillness settled over the land. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth, mingling with the fading notes of desolation that were slowly slipping into the past. It was one of those mornings where everything felt poised between silence and awakening. The fog, which had clung to the village like a shroud, was finally lifting. As it did, the first clean rays of dawn broke through, untouched by shadows of superstition. As the sun cautiously pierced the thinning mist, Ser Thalen stood at the village's edge, his figure a dark sentinel silhouetted against the brightening horizon. The heavy burden of countless nights spent untangling the web of curses and history seemed to lift from his shoulders, leaving him feeling lighter, almost like a man reborn from the shadows of his past. Around him, the villagers moved like ghosts in a waking dream, their steps tentative, as if they were testing the ground of a newly imagined world. Thalen observed them with a quiet respect, a part of him, the knight feeling a deep connection to their struggles and resilience. His own trek through the haunting secrets of Daramir had forced him to confront his inner demons. Now, standing under the clear light of day, he felt a peace he never imagined possible. He understood that the knight he used to be had been transformed by the fires of experience, leaving him not only with scars, but with newfound wisdom. 109 Alara stood next to him, the exiled nun whose visions had been both her guiding light and her torment. Her eyes, once clouded by the burden of her foresight, now shimmered with a growing acceptance. "The visions," she murmured softly, her voice a gentle blend of determination and peace. "They're not a curse, but a gift, a way to see beyond just the here and now." Thalen nodded, locking eyes with her, an unspoken understanding binding them in the quiet. Her journey had been as stormy as his, a relentless struggle against the shackles of her history. Yet here she was, unbroken, her spirit reimagined and reborn from the very threads of her own destiny. Nearby, the scribe, the quiet enigma who had trailed them through shadow and storm, watched the scene unfold with eyes that had grown adept at seeing beyond the limits of parchment. This mute chronicler, once content to capture the world in silent strokes, now found his voice emerging within the tapestry of their shared story. He had stood as a witness to their trials, a recorder of truths, but now, as the village began to stir awake, he felt a change within a rising urge to speak out, to share the narrative that had entwined them all. He moved toward Thalen and Alara, his hand quivering as if burdened by 1,000 unsaid truths. Thalen met sein Blick, fangen de stille Wanhoop in de schrijvers ogen. "Speak," Thalen encouraged softly. "Let's hear the voice that's been silent for so long." The scribe paused, his lips slightly parted, as if they'd forgotten how to form words. But as the mist continued to clear, so too did the barriers inside him. "Our journey," he finally managed, his voice shaky and new, like fledgling birds taking their first flight. It's more than a bunch of moments. It's proof of the unbreakable spirit of those brave enough to find light in the dark. Alara's smile was warm, filled with encouragement and a hint of pride. "Your voice really captures what our journey's all about," she said, her words seamlessly intertwining with his, like threads in a rich tapestry. "Together we've found our way through the unknown, and along the way, we've figured out who we really are." Thalen felt their words sink into him, firm and unshakable like the roots of age-old trees. The scribe's voice transformed from a mere whisper carried by the breeze to a powerful echo of their shared history, a tale woven with redemption, acceptance, and the bravery needed to confront the shadows lurking inside. The villagers were finally getting their lives back, their spirits lifted now that the curse that had weighed them down for so long was gone. They wandered through the village, crafting new tales that would become part of their everyday lives, their gazes set firmly on a future free from the shadows of yesterday. Every step they took seemed to murmur defiantly against the darkness that had tried to swallow them whole, while each breath they drew spoke of the indomitable strength of their resilience. As the sun climbed higher, chasing away the last shadows of night, Thalen realized it was time to leave Daromir behind. This village had been both a testing ground and a refuge, a place where he'd shed his old self and emerged transformed. Yet now, the road beckoned him again, whispering promises of adventure and self-discovery, offering a path not only to distant lands, but towards the man he was destined to be. He glanced at Alara and the scribe, noticing the shared determination flickering in their eyes. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice a steady echo of the resolve pulsing through him. Alara nodded, her eyes sparkling with the promise of what's to come. "The world's waiting," she said, a smile playing at the corners of her lips. "I'm totally ready to embrace it." The scribe nodded, his silence transformed from a shroud into a deliberate choice, a blank canvas on which he would inscribe the chapters of his newly found voice. Together, they had become something greater than their former selves, a living testament to the journey they had shared, the truths they had unearthed, and the shadows they had conquered. With one last look at the village that had woven itself into their very souls, Thalen, Alara, and the scribe set off on their journey. The road unfurled ahead, a ribbon of untold possibilities meandering through the landscape, beckoning them into the mysteries of the unknown. As they strolled along, the fog began to disperse, uncovering a world gently illuminated by the first light of dawn. The air was crisp, brimming with the promise of fresh starts, while the murmurs of the past faded softly into the ether. Moving forward, Thalen sensed the future settling into his steps, a future no longer haunted by the shadows of yesterday, a future crafted by the journey they had embarked on together. In the distance, the Abbey of Daromir loomed one final time against the sky, its silhouette casting a shadow against the dying light. It stood as a haunting monument to the clash of faith and science, a stark reminder of the legacy they had unraveled and the spirits unleashed by their actions. Yet even among its ruins, a seed of hope lay hidden, a testament to the relentless struggle between light and dark, and the flicker of possibility that burned brightly in the hearts of those brave enough to step into the mist. As they pressed on with their journey, every step took them farther from the village, yet brought them nearer to the truth within themselves. The path unfurled before them like a winding thread through the fabric of time. With each footfall, they were keenly aware that whatever awaited them, they would confront it side by side, fortified by the courage of their beliefs and the steadfast glow of hope. As the fog slowly lifted, dawn unveiled a world untainted by superstition, a realm inviting exploration, one cautious step at a time.